Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon, everybody. I've been rather neatly teed up here. Good themes from this morning coming through. Spending, how local government can spend wisely in its community, giving local people opportunities, local leaders really driving change in their communities, in charge of their local destiny, authorities working together, lots of key themes. And actually Jenny's just touched on one or two points that I'm probably going to take a little deeper dive into today, if you'll bear with me. As our chairman says, I am the managing director of Compass Point. It's an innovative new company set up by two councils in Lincolnshire. I'm here to share their story about how they've gone some way towards tackling their financial pressures, but ensuring that every last drop of the public money that came their way is staying in their community and not being leaked away elsewhere. So I'm going to talk about outsourcing, I'm going to talk about social value, and I'm going to talk about innovation and delivering different. So let's start with outsourcing. And first of all, a lovely mixed metaphor from the Financial Times. Britain is in the grips of the biggest wave of outsourcing since the 1980s. I've never been gripped by a wave, but I can imagine. The current market for outsourced services is estimated to be worth about £82 billion, and local government is responsible for 63% of that. There's almost a fifth of local government support services, your HR, your IT, etc. Almost a fifth is outsourced from local government. So local government is actually big business for the private sector. And councils up and down the land are looking at outsourcing as a key part of their juggling act. And of course, there are many successful examples of private sector outsourcing companies working with councils. Services are delivered, costs are reduced, job done, you might be forgiven for thinking. The business process outsourcing mantra, are you familiar with your mess for less? Is that something you've come across? The notion being that someone is going to take your rather muddled, clumsy and antiquated services, knock them into better shape somehow, and deliver those services on your behalf for less than the cost it was before, even sometimes for better standards than you were delivering before. Happy days. Now, let's divert slightly. Let me tell you about our two councils in Lincolnshire. I'm talking here about East Lindsey District Council and South Holland District Council. They were working together back in 2008 to see how they could work together. How could they perhaps operate some sort of shared platform? Should they outsource together? They were obviously getting on quite well. What could they do together? They too had a look at the your mess for less option. And what they found was that became less and less attractive the more they looked at it. Losing their mess was undoubtedly a good option for them. They could see the value in that side of the equation. But the for less took on a bit of an additional meaning when they scraped away some of the layers. There were some key risks in going down this route. They thought that there could well be a lot fewer jobs held in their community. They felt that the savings that could be made would be diluted because, of course, profits need to be made by those in the business. Service expertise, their staff, they valued their knowledge that their staff had. They felt that that might be lost as well. Local knowledge of the community might be lost. Flexibility to change during the course of any particular given contract looked risky or could pose risks as the government keep changing policies and sending additional work down the pipe to local authorities. What would that mean in a contract setting? Accountability and scrutiny was something that bothered them. Would that be reduced as well? And of course, you'd still need to retain a kind of suite of council managers to manage this contract, because of course you'd need to keep an eye on these people who weren't your people. So they were faced with a dilemma. How could the councils get the best of both worlds? How could they get their mess for less, but also avoid leaking social value? How could they change and yet still support their local economy? They decided, you've guessed it by now, they've decided to set up their own outsourcing company, Compass Point Business Services Limited, a company where they would be the shareholders. Private limited company owned by the two councils. Staff from HR, finance, IT, revenues, benefits, customer services, they were cheaply transferred into the company. Business processes were redesigned by those staff with some external assistance. Shared ICT platforms and systems were introduced so the two councils could work on one common platform. The company started trading in 2010. A 10-year contract was struck with the two councils. In its first year of operation, the company saved those two councils 20% of the costs of fulfilling those services than before, £2.1 million. I feel this is a small amount compared to some of the numbers I saw this morning, but the opportunity exists for others. In the second year of trading, the company has stretched this even further. The company is governed by a board, as you would expect. It's subject to all the audit and scrutiny processes that any other council department would expect. Everything is very open and transparent. The councils don't need to retain managers on their side to manage the contract. No profit is made. We're very proud of that, because any surplus, as I would call it, is ploughed back into the community or back into frontline services. Changes in work volumes are discussed and pragmatic solutions are found to those problems, rather than a contract being waived with a change notice being gleefully positioned in front of the Chief Executive. All jobs are retained locally. A new apprenticeship scheme has been introduced to give opportunities to local people in that low-wage rural economy. Indeed, we've been nominated by our first college partner as Employer of the Year in Rutland and Lincolnshire for the work that we're doing with young people. The company is set up, the point that Jenny was making, the company is set up to partner with other councils because it is wholly owned by two public sector authorities. It enjoys the TECAL status, meaning that other authorities can work with it without having to go through long and expensive object procurement processes. And we've introduced some really radical new ways of working that are creating something of a revolution for the team members in the company. More on that in a short while. The real question here is how can the shared services model deliver social value and regeneration? And for me, they're all connected. And something we've not heard mentioned too much today is the Public Services Social Value Act, passed in 2012, the first attempt through legislation to strike a balance between financial and social value. It came into force just last week. So what does it say? It says that public service contracts over a certain value must now be designed with social value in mind, not just financial value. That's to say, you are going to have to consider the wider benefits of the community when procuring. Commissioners will have to consider the economic, environmental and social benefits before procuring goods, and they will also have to consider whether they should consult their community before proceeding. And so what will this mean? It will mean that the procurement processes and approach will need to change. The real community benefits that you are seeking will be valued, visible, alongside the cost savings. Your residents will have an opportunity to say what they value. But the emphasis is going to be very much on you in this room trying to define what that social value return on investment will look like. Will it be jobs for people not in education, employment or training? Will it be contracts with social enterprises? Will it be jobs for local people more generally? Will it be a living wage for the employees of whatever company goes forward? Some people say that the legislation will actually make it harder for you to save money, and in the immediate term maybe it will. But I guess where they're coming from with this is that over the longer term, the Act, if it's used to its potential, could help reduce the demand, getting back to the point Jenny was making, reduce the demand for services and save the public purse. I guess the opportunity we have here is to help people help themselves. If by commissioning with social value in mind, it keeps jobs in your community, then people will have wages that they can spend and wages that can support local businesses, that virtual circle. If by commissioning with social value in mind, it keeps the profits in your community, they could be invested by your local authority. If commissioning in social value in mind provides business opportunities for social enterprises, then we will definitely have more bang for our buck. There's a selfish reason to use this Act wisely when, of course, according to Eric Pickles, 70% of local authority income will be raised locally in the future. So that we have a self-interest, if I could say that, in promoting our economies. And that doesn't necessarily mean reaching for the traditional outsourcers. There's a few caveats though, of course. The Act is a bit loose in places. The Act says nothing about how organisations should consider social value, just that you should. The Act is designed to encourage, not prescribe. The measurement of social value, difficult subject, is extremely open to interpretation. And so I don't see change being that rapid. And of course, in a recent survey, 8 out of 10 English local authorities do not measure social value at the moment within their procurement processes. So we've got a fair way to go. That said, there are a lot of hopes, especially in the social enterprise sector, that the Act over time will transform the way the public sector buys services. Some authorities, of course, are way ahead of the new legislation and indeed have been working in this way, and there's some good examples not far from here, integrating social value into the way that they let contracts. We believe that the approach that East Lindsey and South Holland District Councils have taken to set up their own in-house outsourcing organisation is actually quite a powerful option to choose if you are looking to outsource your services, outsource them to your own company and keep that value in your community. If you really still do want to go down the mess for less route, at the very least, challenge your suppliers to demonstrate how they can offer value into the community. Finally, I just want to share with you a radical new approach to the way in which we're working. I realise this is probably a little bit off topic, but it's just really, really interesting. So bear with me. We wanted to explore the very bleeding edge, I suppose, of different thinking for our team members. It's the sort of commercial thinking that Jenny referenced a moment ago there. How could we work with our teams in a very different way, far removed from their council background, but still maintain those standards and integrity and discipline? I mean, in this room, we all know that public sector staff are some of the most knowledgeable and experienced, willing and driven people. Our challenge was how to kind of let them breathe a little bit, let them bloom in their environment, and be more productive and more able to control their busy lives the way they wanted to do that. That radical new way of working for us turned out to be something called ROWE, R-O-W-E, Results Only Working Environment. And because I have to be careful with lawyers, I will say that this is a concept owned by an organisation called Culture RX, who operate in America. You can go row.com for more information on ROWE. I need to say that, believe me. ROWE is an approach in which people focus entirely on their results and not on the time spent. It's an approach that increases organisational performance whilst cultivating the right kind of environment for busy people with lots of demands in their life. We've been trialling ROWE since last July with our benefit assessors, and the results have actually been quite stunning. We've increased their productivity by 50%, 50, at the same time as we've improved work-life balance in a way that I've certainly never seen before in any organisations I've worked with, more on that in a moment. The way it works, our team is allocated work for a week ahead, and what they do, where they do it, and how they do it is entirely up to them, as long as they get their work done. They can lie in every morning, they can catch a movie in the afternoon, they can pick up the kids from school, they can sit in for the washing machine repairman, they can take Granny to hospital for her appointment. They need no permission to do any of the above. Nobody's tracking their time, nobody's asking them questions. The team works out what they need to get done, and they do it. Everyone is treated like an adult. How refreshing. Because the team members are working when they work best, and because their time is their own, they find ways of eliminating the waste, reducing the non-value-added tasks. They are more efficient with their communications and their interactions with each other. ROWE is like Sky Plus. Sky Plus for your work. It's your work the way you want it. Because we're all able to see their performance in detail on a week-by-week basis and how it compares to colleagues, we have a far more constructive debate about their performance. The managers and team alike have welcomed the newfound transparency and openness. We're managing the work, not the people. A big shift. So it truly has been a win-win scenario. Productivity is hugely improved, but for me the responses of the team are fantastic too. We surveyed the team before this trial and 3 months afterwards. We asked them these kind of questions. I'm proud to work for this company. Only 37% said they were at the start, 67% at the end. I recommend this company as a good place to work. Again, only 37% at the start, 61% at the end. The company promotes health and well-being of employees. Only 25% agreeing with that statement, 58% after the trial. This is interesting. Some parts of my working day are not productive. 69% were saying some parts of their day not productive. At the end, only 22% saying some parts of their day unproductive. My current working pattern suits my personal circumstances. 0 at the start. Damning indictment, isn't it? 78% agreeing with that by the end of the trial. And here's just one of the comments received from one of our colleagues. I absolutely love Roe. I haven't felt this happy in my job in a long time. I love working from home, and I no longer feel like I don't want to get out of bed anymore. This morning, I was up and working at 6 a.m. In my pyjamas, I admit, but I was getting the job done. I feel I'm more productive than I was, and I always make sure I've met my target in return for being able to have a long coffee with a friend at 10, or a long lunch, or a Friday off. It's great. Please keep Roe. So we're now rolling out this way of working to the remainder of the Compass Point teams. It's rather defining us as an innovative place to work. It's driving further efficiencies for the councils and in turn allowing them to deliver more social value into the community. To sum up, I think these two councils in Lincolnshire have considered all of the options available to them in the face of some quite significant economic pressure and more coming. They've had the courage to find a way of sustaining their local communities at the same time as driving an ambitious cost reduction programme. They didn't set out to do this, but they've also probably done a fair amount to adhere to the new Act that's just come out. There is an alternative approach to outsourcing council services, and we would say you don't have to ride the outsourcing wave to survive. Thank you very much. Tracking through sickness, because we started the trial in July, we didn't actually see too much difference in sickness through the summer period. Very low normally and very low through the summer. I suspect when we look at that through the winter, we will see that improve. Anecdotally, you hear that people often will say that they wake up not feeling so great, and whether they normally have called in sick and not shown up, they just kind of get over it because they can have another cup of tea, they can stay in bed, they can get their act together. They tend not to take those sick leaves, if that's where you're headed.
Okay, well, so any questions for Jenny and Marcus?
Hi Marcus, Graham Burgess, Central Regeneration of Rother District Council. You haven't actually said anything about what services you deliver for the local authorities that set you up. I wonder if you could just expand on what you actually do for them.
Yeah, sure, thanks. I did mention that the finance, HR, ICT, revenue collection, benefits and the customer service side of things. We're now looking, I think because this was a bit of a leap of faith for the two councils. They've seen us now operating for 2 years. These services were nice and convenient, if you like. They were all packaged up quite nicely, the whole of customer services, the whole of revenues. What we're now in dialogue with the councils about is taking some of the other administrational services that need to be separated from their statutory functions. So the front end of planning, for example, planning administration or environmental services, we can do elements of that. And if we apply the same brush, the same model, I think we will take another 20% out of those services too. So we're also looking to provide them with a procurement service and a project management service as well. So the confidence is growing, I think, within the councils and allowing us to come forward with new propositions as well.
Jess comes from City York Council. We've set up a local authority trading company as well, and I was wondering what your perspective was on why you need to become a trading company to be able to transform and improve services when there's nothing that you've actually done there that can be done in there. Why is the imperative to outsource even if you're doing it yourself?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There's an ambition to work with other authorities and provide services to other organisations now or in the future. So that's one reason why setting up a company helps to facilitate that. The other reason I think was that the two councils really felt that setting up a new vehicle would help, would be a catalyst for the change. Let's face it, they had tried taking out costs for years and years, and by making this change and forcing a change of culture, forcing a new approach, and really removing tiers of management supervision in the process, this was a very strong way of getting to a new model. I think they felt that they would probably carry on doing more of the same if it stayed within the organisation. Because it's their company, they're in full control of it. We have a dialogue about the service standards. I'm often in front of scrutiny and audit and all of those sort of good things. So it's I really enjoy it. They have a very tight relationship with this company because it's theirs. But I think they just felt that would be the right vehicle for them. Other authorities have gone for a committee structure, and there are various other vehicles. So I think, on balance, it was just a mixture of the opportunity for future trading plus just a change of culture that drew them to them.
But what I didn't quite get is you're using the same staff to be tubuted on the same conditions, they're doing the same jobs, and yet they're getting 20% more efficiency than they were previously under a different regime. How is that? Is that because you've used the opportunity to strip management out?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of there were 300 FTEs across these services when we started, and now 205.
And are you saying you couldn't do that under the existing regime being essentially an arm of the local authority, or division of the local authority?
You could do that, yeah, and many authorities have just restructured and taken that out. But I think on top of that, we have now reached new levels of productivity. We've just, for example, in this current financial year to December, from April, we have processed as many benefit claims as we had in the previous entire year in 11-12, because of the additional load coming down from the DWP. Thank you, James. So that would not have been possible, I don't think, unless they took more radical approaches to finding, eliminating waste and working in a different way, challenging some of the assumptions that existed before.
Yeah, we've done a little bit of research about sort of companies that have been set up in property and asset management, actually, on these services. And what people are telling us is the benefit of being removed one step from working in the council really allows them to take a more business-like approach, really, to focus on what it is that they've agreed to do with the council, and to have a whole year to go at that without priorities, etc., changing. So that's really come over quite loud and clear. That ability to agree what the job is and then get on with it really helps them.
Question from over there.
I think this is really quite scary, because it suggests to me that those same members of staff, whilst they're working in the council, performing the council's services, are not being managed in a way that makes them efficient or feel valued. And it's only when they move out into this sort of artificial environment that they're getting that. The local asset-backed vehicles that have been arriving on the horizon with great applause and then collapsing recently, are they just a way of some councils trying to offload the responsibility for the things they can't get right themselves to somebody else and avoid transparency?
Well, there's been mixed success, hasn't there, with things that have been called local asset-backed vehicles. And from what I see, the ones that haven't succeeded so well, particularly in this market, have been the ones that have been purely about development, because the development market out there is really difficult, and if the private sector aren't developing anyway, then the fact that they're in a land fee is probably not going to make too much difference. But some of the ones that we're seeing that are being successful have got other income streams attached. So the land fee partner might be managing commercial estate or delivering other services, and through that income stream they're then able to, if you like, do a bit of cross-subsidy with development. So it's having a more rounded kind of business is helping.
I also think it depends on the culture as well of the council that you might deal with. Some of you out there might be thinking, well, my staff operate like this now, and then that may well be the case. In this particular example, and it may be a sort of rural Lincolnshire type approach where things are very traditional and have been done the same way for a long time, and so coming in with some different approaches and some different challenges and putting people, although they are in front of the same screen, in the same building, but actually doing different things with them, giving them more responsibility, asking them, cascading responsibility down to people rather than them always looking up but asking for permission. In our particular case, that's been a strong shift from where they were previously.
The question at the back.
Hi, Julie Fisher from Surrey County Council. Just wanted to ask you about bidding for new work and the fact that TECL will eventually fall away and you will have to bid for the business of the councils. And you did talk about bidding for new business. What costs have you put anything into the business model that takes account of bidding for business and, if you like, competing with some of the private sector organisations?
What we're looking at the moment is and we're talking to a number of councils who are not in a dissimilar position to the two councils that we work with at the moment, in that they have come together, they've shared a chief executive or shared a management team, but below that they haven't really done much more with their service areas. They haven't really integrated their services, they haven't put them on a common platform, they haven't got a set of common standards, a common way of working. And for those authorities, our proposition to them is that, look, we've got a model here that you could apply. We've done the homework on what your board should look like, what your governance arrangement should look like, how the legals work, how the platforms work. Our platforms are scalable so that if an authority needed a finance platform, it can sit on ours without having to go and purchase their own. If they need a Revs and Bens platform, so they can come and sit on our Capita Academy. It's all scaled to work that way. Our Avaya phone system's the same. I can answer anybody's phone calls in the country if they're sitting on our phone system. And so, in return for sharing that insight and knowledge and helping two authorities set up, if you like, a franchise version of Compass Point elsewhere in the country, we would take a franchise fee, in essence, to help offset some of the investment that the two authorities have made in Lincolnshire. So, in terms of investing or allocating budget, is that the question for bidding? It's all about relationships and about conversations with councils. We're not interested in competing with the big outsourced players. We haven't got any capacity as such. I've stripped that right down to the bone to give us the savings. So it's not like I've got 50 people waiting to do somebody's benefit claims, for example. That's not the model we're looking at. We're looking at partnering. We're looking for authorities to partner with us if they so wish. The model is sufficient currently for the two authorities to be saving, they're hitting the targets that they want to hit. I think any additional partnering would be a bonus, would be a plus, would be a good thing, but it's not a key part of our financial business case.
Or would you consider other partners being part of the business, so if you like taking a shareholding as part of the business then?
Yes, that's exactly how we're structured, yeah. The two A share East Lindsey, B share South Holland. There's a C share that could be taken by other partners in the business. Or they could set up their own. We're Compass Point East Coast, you could be a Compass Point Surrey, or a Compass Point Southwest, or a Compass Point Northwest, and operate the same model. But save yourselves a huge amount of time. These authorities took 2, 3, 4 years to get to this point, to make this thing set up and work. So we have a model now that actually anybody could latch onto and utilise and move pretty quickly to start making these savings.
Okay, one final question.
It's just a legal point to make. If you have to bid for that,
Yeah.
because you're a separate organisation and the European going to change, so there won't be any part B services. Do you have the resources to competitively bid and win that? Because if you can't do that, you face insolvency.
Well, not quite, because we're set up to do what we do for our two authorities. We can bid, and we have bid in the past for directly in competition. When the company first started, we did bid into a number of opportunities and progressed with those actually quite well. Where we differ from the bigger players, let's say, is they are prepared to put an upfront investment into authorities and buy everyone an iPad and invest in their IT, that kind of thing. Where we're not really in that game. So we found in those first few instances of looking for that bidding, we pulled away, in fact, before we got to those final stages, because we weren't competing on the same playing
You
field.
will have to in the future. No business. I mean, there are, I can think of an example, local government, they set up trusts, they set up companies to deliver, but because they're not getting the resources for investment, it's fine to begin with, but then as the business needs investment and it needs income, it doesn't get it, so the business
Well,
can fail.
I hear what
You
you're
don't
saying.
look ahead for investment.
Yeah.
Okay, right, thanks very much.